Hello, hello, hello. I am Tiffany, your self-image coach. I help women polish their mind, image, and lifestyle. So today is actually going to be a very knockout segment. This is actually my last segment featuring a guest. Hey, Kathy. Featuring a guest. So I'm going to be featuring the life of an everyday goddess. And let me rephrase. This is my last segment for the year of 2021. So thank you. So once we finish this, it's a wrap for the year, and we'll be going into next year with, new guests, new speakers, and all of that good stuff. But I am going to invite Julie onto my live. So Julie is she has her podcast. She has a YouTube. I'm gonna let her introduce herself because she could probably do a better job, and I'm gonna invite her in now. Let me see. Oh, there she goes. Okay. Okay, so she should be hopping on here any second now. Hi.
Hey!
Hi, Julie. How are you?
I am so good.
I love to hear it. I love your makeup.
You do? Thank you.
Yes, very
I feel
nice.
like it's very Christmassy because of red lip.
Okay, yes, for the holidays. I love it. So I was just introducing you to the audience, but you go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So my name is Julie. I have a podcast called Life of an Everyday Goddess. And it's kind of like a self-discovery journey. And then I bring other people on to talk about their self-discovery journeys, because when I was going through all of my awakening, listening to other people that had very similar stories to me made me feel like less alone, because a lot of people go through the awakening alone. So me giving back in that way has been like one of the most fulfilling things. So I have that. I have a YouTube channel that's more like glitzy glammy, that's like fashion and makeup, but I do have a goddess empowerment series that's also on there on one of the playlists. But for whatever reason, people don't normally go on YouTube for that. They mainly go for makeup and fashion, but I do have that on there too. But
I can definitely attest to that, because I created a YouTube channel a while back, and I started to talk about my journey, and it was crickets.
I don't know what it is, but
yeah, they're not interested.
Like, show me the makeup.
Right, only the makeup, they like the glam. So I'm like, okay, I'll take my talents elsewhere. That's fine.
I think the right people find it.
Huh?
The right people find it when it's time.
Right, exactly. So I just think it's harder to crack into YouTube with that, but
yeah. But it's so weird, because I remember whenever I started my awakening, I got rid of like social media. So YouTube was the only outlet plus podcast that I was actually using, because I was like too involved into social media where it was like consuming my whole life. And I needed to just delete like Instagram and all of that. And so that's what I did. So
and take a break.
How I gained knowledge was through there. So I think that like, even if it's like 1% of people that actually benefit from that, I was like that 1% at one time. So I keep it on there. It just doesn't, like you said, it doesn't get as many views.
I love that. But as long as you touch one person, that's the ultimate goal. So,
it really is.
Right.
I was that one person at one time.
Exactly. So, quick background, guys. I actually this is my first time interacting with Julie.
I know.
So, a mutual friend recommended that you come onto the segment, and when I scanned your page, I actually, because I always stalk whoever is gonna come on here, so I'm like scanning. I'm like, yes, I love the content. I love what's going on here. So I just want to say, like, 'cause I discovered your videos through YouTube, and I loved it when I was going through your content. So I was like, I never see stuff like this on YouTube. So I
like really YouTube more, because you get to see people's personality more than a picture.
It's visual, right? Mm-hmm. It's visual, so I can definitely agree. So let's jump right into it. I thought your IG name was very interesting, Life of an Everyday Goddess.
Yes.
Talk to us about that. You can tell us, how do you define a goddess?
That's such a deep question. But the reason I chose everyday goddess is honestly because I feel like every day us as like feminine, beautiful energy, we embody traits of a goddess, what a
Okay.
goddess really is. And to me, I'm like, there's nothing that is anything special, I guess, that is outside of you that is like more than, like I feel like people are like goddess is like the top tier, which is like a great compliment to yourself. But at the same time, I wanted to show people that no matter what it is that you are, or who you are, or where you came from, that you also have that, and just to own that part of yourself, that goddess element into your reality, and kind of claim it for yourself. But for me, I'm like, goddess is like such a broad term because I feel like so many people throw it out.
Right.
But it's true because there's so many different elements to it. Just like there's so many different goddesses that embody different things. Like if you go back in history, there's a goddess of, love, a goddess of like nature, mother, earth, and all these other different types of goddesses. And there's different phases. So like in Celtic culture, because I have like a Celtic background, I don't look like it, but my mom is Irish. There's this thing called a triple goddess, and it's like the phases of the goddess. So you have the maiden, which is like the younger goddess. You have the mother, which is that maternal instinct that kind of takes in. And then you have the crone, which is like the wisdom. And so it's kind of like your journey through life and how every phase of your life has like different, elements and a different story, but how you embody that. And for me, I did ayahuasca earlier this year, which was like mind blowing, but it really tapped me into my intuition, which I think is the main element of a goddess, honestly, because I think the more I started to trust myself and my intuition, I really tapped into that energy. And
I love that. I love that. And
no,
we're
oh
gonna
my
go
gosh,
into that too.
so critical on myself, and I'm like, why?
I feel
So
like
whatever.
we're all born with the innate ability to kind of like with discernment to know the right choices to make, but we second guess ourselves so much with
Oh,
everything, and it's like it's all already within us. So
yes,
we
like as you are is perfect. And I think that when I did the ayahuasca, I was like, it was weird because everybody has a different experience every single time you do it. And it took me through like all of like any trauma I had in my life, and how if I was to follow that intuition that we all have as, like feminine energy, it would have, things would have just turned so differently. And it wasn't so much to like have shame, but it was to have that awareness. And so that moving forward, it's like, listen, if you just trust yourself, you can avoid all this other stuff. But it's almost like that catch-22, because like, had I not lived the other, would I appreciate having that gift now,
right,
So it's
right.
like,
I
that's
always
why
say that.
I'm observing it. Yeah. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
everything in life is like a catch, like 22. Like even when we regret like choices, like everything is used as a lesson to move forward. Like even with like relationships that I regretted, they but seriously, it's taught me my non-negotiables in life. So
Yes.
everything is used as some form of a lesson. So
Yes, I
I
agree.
always say that. Let's talk a little bit about your awakening. So when do you feel like you had your awakening?
Oh, that was 2018. I know that for a fact because everything in my life changed completely. And I
Okay.
always view it as like, because it's such always a hard time, in your life whenever things change and you're so used to a certain pattern. But it's almost like you can't really build on an unsteady foundation. So you sometimes have to like have your whole life stripped away to like rebuild. Because otherwise, what are you building? You're building on unsteady ground, and it's gonna just fall to the ground. So that was when I had everything in my life 360 changed, and I had to really like focus on myself and go within. And that's when I got rid of all the social media and all of that stuff. And I really just, for a whole year, did nothing but learn, observe, and
I
really
love
start
that.
to rebuild trust in myself. And that was so challenging, but so rewarding at the same time. So
I love that. Just to piggyback off of that, it's so interesting because I had my awakening as well in 2018.
what?
But for me, yes, that's so crazy. But for me, what's crazy is that nothing drastic happened. I think my life was like so mundane and I was just doing the same thing every day. And I just started questioning everything. Like, why am I here?
Oh, that's good.
What
That's a
am I
good question.
doing here? Like, what is my purpose here? I just started to view things so much differently. I started to view my conversations with my friends differently. Like, what are we talking about? Does this have importance? How is this helping me grow? What do I want to leave like here before I leave the earth? I think what initiated it, I was dating someone and it just the way it stopped, nothing stopped. We just stopped talking. And I just started to realize that my life was like this routine of just emptiness. Like I just felt empty one day. And I woke up and it hit me so hard one day. I woke up and that's when I went on a journey of just like reading a lot, indulging in podcasts and videos and learning as well. So that's really crazy that you were in 2018 as well,
Yeah,
because
and it was
that
like
happened for
middle
me
of
as well.
2018 too. So it was like, I think it was like May or so. But see, I think because I know I'm a little bit stubborn, so I don't know if it was like the universe was like, okay, we have to really get through to her because otherwise it would be more passive, like, oh, okay.
Right.
Because I already knew about like certain things. Like I've already read, up on certain books and I knew about crystals and certain manifestation techniques, but like I didn't really dive into it. It was like very surface level.
Okay.
So that was like years, like a couple years before that. And it didn't really hit me to go and dive deep until 2018, until it's like I had to. Because in 2015, it was like surface level stuff. And I was reading
Right.
like Napoleon Hill and I was just like kind of getting into it and applying certain like law of attraction, techniques, but nothing really life changing,
Yeah,
until I was
absolutely.
forced to.
Absolutely. So it's like we come from like different walks, but we still have the same end result. So that's all that
Exactly.
matters. Like as long as you start questioning and you realize like, okay, it's time to change, that's the ultimate goal. So one thing I noticed on that journey was isolation. And that's what I was gonna
Yes.
ask you about next. With me, I noticed that I guess when you're on that journey, it was hard for me to kind of like decide who stayed in my life or how to adjust the dosage of the access that people had to me. So
Yes.
I was very like, oh, like you're cut off, you're cut off, you're cut off, like abruptly, because I wanted to protect my growth so much. I didn't want it to be tainted. So I was just so adamant about cutting people off who didn't get it, who didn't understand. And now that I'm just, I'm more evolved, I know now the place that people have in my life and where they stand. But how did you deal with that? The
I
isolation
constantly deal
aspect.
with that. I think different phases, because I think it's like you have one big awakening and then throughout your life, the course, as you develop and evolve, you have like another awakening, might not be as intense, but you constantly want growth anyway, because otherwise it's like, what are you doing? So as I
Right.
keep growing, I'll have friend groups that come in and I think they're all meant to interact with me to teach me a lesson, for me to absorb what I want from them, what I don't want from them, what they want from me, all of this. So it's all these
Right.
like growth and interactions. But I don't know, I constantly go through phases where it's like people, places, things, like my interests will constantly change. And I don't know why that is for me, but I'm really good at letting go. And I think I've learned to accept change because I think the old me, and this is why probably my awakening was so intense, I was clinging on to everything. I didn't want to let go of anything. And so one of the biggest lessons I learned back in 2018 was allowing things to really like just flow. And who's ever meant to be there is meant to be there. And if there's anything that pops up like a trigger or an argument, I have to absorb that and like really ask myself why, and not really get so mean. I don't like to cut people off, so not to get so mean right away, but to understand. And I've been better, I think, the last 2 years since the pandemic at really just having a honest conversation with the people that I have to like let go and tell them why. And you know, it's so funny because when you're really honest with somebody, you'd be surprised that they're normally on the same page, but it's just like nobody ever talks about it. Like the honesty, like, hey, this isn't really working out, or hey, this is why I feel like I do. But nobody ever wants to say anything, so you kind of just stay stuck in that energy. So the more that I've like accepted that and like, hey, maybe let's not hang out as much or whatever, you know, it just flows out. The one thing though is like my best friend, me and her have like had these like growth and changes in our lives because we've known each other for like 15 years, but we'll go through phases ourselves with like not talking for like a couple of months, and then we come back together and it's like no time has passed,
nothing ever happened.
yeah. So it's almost like if I don't let her go to live her life and she doesn't let me go to live my life, then we're both not growing. And so that's another reason I look at our relationship and I'm like, the more that I allow things to flow, the more we both grow as people. And it's so crazy.
I
but
love
it's
that.
yeah.
I love that. So what tips do you have for someone who might have a hard time with letting go? Because as much as I cut people off, I hate to hurt people. So I
That's why I have
struggle.
the conversations, but it's harder depending on who the person is. Because if you've had like a relationship with somebody, you have a different type of
Dynamic.
you know, dynamic, yeah, and there's different feelings that are involved. If it's like an
Right.
acquaintance or somebody that you hung out with a couple of times, obviously that's going to be a lot easier. So it really
Right.
just depends, but you also have to ask yourself, like, what am I holding on to? Am I
That's
holding on
good.
to
I like that.
feelings? Am I holding on to this person for security, whether it's emotional, financial, whatever it is? Like, why? What's the why? Just like how you're awakening, you wanted to know what the why was.
Right.
I would say ask yourself what the why is and be very honest with yourself. Whenever, yeah.
I love
And
that.
it's true. That's what
That
I do. I
is
would
very
ask myself
true. That is
why.
very true. I think a lot of times it's just like it's just an attachment, and you just
Yes.
don't want to let go because you've known this person for X amount of years. But
Or you don't want to hurt their feelings or
right,
all
or
these
you're
other
scared
things.
that
But
they may not be receptive to what you tell them. So yeah.
sometimes, like
Oh,
I said, sometimes you'll have a conversation, you'll be surprised how many people are like, I kind of felt that too. And you're like, we both weren't going to say anything because we both didn't want, I don't know. It's weird.
right.
Yeah.
Right. I love
Some of
that.
them are harder though to let go, depending again on the relationship. But you also have to be very vulnerable and honest with yourself what you want.
Got
So.
it. Absolutely. So what can you do, or what can you say to the audience to encourage people to tap into their awakening?
Well, mine kind of just happened. But if you wanted to, I guess, force it, I guess you could do that, right? Because like labor, if you think about it, it naturally happens, but you can also help it happen. I would say start meditating. One, kind of just like open that channel. Even doing things like doing research and stuff, because meditation, some people don't really want to just sit in a room and be with their own thoughts. That's so healing though when you're able to like master that and really just be with yourself. But if it's hard for you to meditate at first, I would just walk. Like I know that sounds weird, but like just getting your blood flowing and being able to process thoughts as you walk can kind of just start to like get, I don't know, things start to click and you just
Become
have
more
that
clear.
self, yeah, without it being weird in a room and, you know, completely quiet and stuff like that.
But see, I think that's important. Like you should be able to spend time with yourself alone. And if you're not, if
some
that
people
makes you,
can't.
but then you should question that. Like
Exactly.
why do you have to be distracted? Why does there have to be so much noise around you? So that's kind of something to dive into. I think asking yourself questions, asking yourself candid questions, can help you tap into more the oven awakening. I think we feed the ego a lot in life, so we don't like to really, look in the mirror. So
I think that's why drugs and alcohol are such a big thing. I'm just like, you know, social media or just, you know, TV in general, because people are distracting. It's like instead of being with their own selves and silence,
right,
I need some noise. I need something to get my mind off of what's trying to come out.
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's why I say go when you. I know it sounds funny, but when you go for a walk, you're kind of like, even if you're listening to music, you're a little more detached, so you're able to kind of like let those thoughts flow through. I think the beginning
I like
phases,
that.
obviously, you can
Right. right.
Other
Yeah.
things.
Or at least
But
like
yeah,
dedicate some time per day, a small amount of time per day to yourself, just spending time with yourself. I mean, and
that's
you
so
don't have, I'm
healthy.
not saying like, an hour off rip, but maybe 15 minutes per day with yourself and your thoughts and your why.
Even, sometimes I'll like just drive and I'll turn the music either really low or just off, or just drive in general too, and I just like one with my thoughts.
I love
Like
it.
that's a really good one too. Even just like when I started to research things, because like I said, I kind of like was dabbing into stuff, but I didn't really dive deep. It kind of does make you see the world a little differently, so you can start asking questions. You know,
Right. Right. I love that. I love that. Anything to just, yeah, provoke those questions, make those thoughts come up, go for it. So one thing I do with women is I help them a lot with their confidence. So I wanted to
I
ask you,
saw your TikTok. I randomly it popped up. I was like, I love it.
yes, I am getting a woman back to seeing herself. So with yourself,
Yes.
the image, it's mainly about how you view yourself. So
Yes.
I always like try to encourage people. There's three components to it. It's the way you see yourself, the way the world sees you, and then the way you want to be seen by the world. But a lot of times, if you view yourself in the highest tier, the other two follow. So you just have
Yeah.
to kind of focus on that. And most people are focused on how the world sees them. So
I think we're
um,
fed that though, because I think about when you're a kid and you misbehave and your family's like, oh, they're gonna, like they kind of want to mold you to be something, and
right.
so I think that's just, oh, yeah, that's
So we're conditioned for
we're
approval
definitely from a very young age,
of
especially
others.
depending on your household, how you grew up. You could have been, very strict parents, and then you're just like too scared. That like your inner child is too scared to break that mold. So that's like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what tips do you have for women to kind of come out
ooh,
of that? Not to even cut you off, but speaking of that, that is so true because my
that's
parents were
true. No, that's a
African.
big one though. The tips.
Huh?
I said the tips. There's a lot of tips because there's a lot of healing for that one.
Okay.
that breaking that mold takes sometimes
It
people
takes a
a while.
while. It takes a while. I really feel like it didn't take me until I hit college before I like found my identity. But my whole life I was always like trying to please my parents, trying to please people around me. I
Mm-hmm.
was very much a people pleaser. Like the image I created for myself was based on the world, was based on the outside world. So,
I think most people are like that. It's just hard to admit because
right.
our shape, like we're all very much shaped to, fit into society's mold, whatever it is, based on our cultural background and all that. So whatever it is.
Environment.
Mm-hmm. I was
Absolutely.
always a rebel though. I always never agreed. I was always like, oh, I don't agree with this. I'm going to do it different. That's why I said I'm a little stubborn.
You ask questions. That's what
I
you do.
ask
You
questions.
ask questions. You need answers.
But
So
you still get scared because you're still molded, and because it's like it's survival mode, right? So
right.
if you don't behave, there's going to be consequences. So sometimes you do have to just mold, and you have to like then rewire how you want to be and find out who you want to be, and that's where spending time with yourself is a great outlet for that, because sometimes we don't know who we want to be unless we spend that time with ourselves and really ask ourselves like, why am I with this person? Why am I wearing this? Do I actually like my hair this color? Like, I remember when I was younger, I wanted my hair a certain way, and then like my family was like, why? And I'm like, well, because I wanted it. So I was like, I never did my hair that way because like everybody always questioned, like, I wanted like bright pink hair, and they were like, you're crazy. But I'm like, no, I just really like, maybe I
That's
am
what I
crazy,
want.
but there's no crazy. I don't feel like crazy is just like the not normal. And I'm like, I'm definitely not normal because I'm just myself.
Right. As you should be. So let me see.
But to get to that state, I think you just have to build trust in yourself. Honestly, that's really what it is. Because when you really trust yourself, you trust your decisions, you trust your judgment, you trust your intuition. And that's really where a lot of like true goddess power is. Because if you think about a goddess, like she's fully, you can't tell her something like, oh, you did it wrong, because she trusts herself so much and her intuition so much,
Yes.
and it leads her to where she needs to go, even if it's maybe, you know, another lesson in life, she accepts that and then she flows to her next destination and she really in power of her life and where she's headed. And I think that's really where true confidence comes from.
I love that. I love that. And that's one thing I always encourage my clients. Build that relationship with yourself.
With yourself.
Build that relationship with yourself, because once you are like here with you, like there's nothing, these external forces, people, voices, you're so one with yourself. You're so tight with yourself. Nothing can affect that. So
I agree.
I always, let me see if there's anything. Guys, if you have any questions you want to ask Julie, definitely put it in the comments. The floor is open. The floor is open. So another thing, and I see that you're a glam girl like me. I love it. Another thing I encourage my clients a lot also is to take pride in your appearance.
Yes.
Take pride in your appearance.
Like, however it is you want. Yeah, for you. Like, do it for you.
Whatever that looks like for you. Like, not even what the people around you look like, but whatever that looks like for you. Because especially like when the pandemic hit, a lot of people were working from home. And working from home, sometimes you can, you know, like kind of like you're dressed in the same. You can roll over from pajamas into the day and just do this every day and every day, when you need to take the time to actually put the effort into how you look. So what do you think about that? How can you contribute to that aspect, that conversation of taking pride in your appearance?
I always feel like others will treat you the way you treat yourself. So they're a reflection of how you treat yourself. So if I treat myself like, say, I don't feel like I'm worth an extra 5 minutes in the shower. Like if I'm like, oh, I don't have time to shave my legs or whatever, but I really wanted to, but I feel too rushed. So I'm not honoring myself, right? So I'm not allowing myself to have that extra time. So when I go out into the world, you know, later on in the day, and people are cutting me off on the road or whatever, it's like a reflection of how I already treated myself and how I already told myself, you know, how I want to be treated, right? And so for me, taking those extra, you know, 5 minutes, and sometimes it really is just 5 extra minutes, but
it is
really, like, this putting the lipstick on took me like under a minute, but it was something that I did because I enjoy it. I really do enjoy it, and it's how I want others to treat me. They're like, okay, I want to give myself this extra 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be makeup. It doesn't have to be shaved. It could just be you gave yourself extra 5 minutes to meditate, to have a coffee, to sleep. But you're on so much, and that's the energy that you're projecting out to the world. So I think just giving yourself that extra time and really giving back to yourself, whatever it is that you like, whether it's hair, makeup, some people are really into accessories, whatever it is that you want to do, but doing that is going to really build the tone for your everyday life.
I love it. I love it. I always tell people, set the tone. You make sure you want to make sure you set the tone for yourself, because what I've noticed is that a lot of time I've heard like, you know what, when I get into a relationship, I'll start doing this, or when I you know, like when I'm in this part of my life, I'll start doing this. But you want to already be where you desire to be before people come into your life, before people come into your world. You want to already be there. Like they're coming to you, meeting you here, not you're trying to reach this level. And so I always ask my clients, like, who are you getting polished for? Like, what's your why? Is it a man? Is it other people? Or is it for you? So,
because when it's for other people, when those people, if they're not meant to be and they flow out, then does that flow out too?
Right.
Like,
absolutely. Right. So what are you going to do if they leave? Does this stop? So, you know, I always tell people, like, what are you doing when no one's watching? Like, because even if I'm just like casually going to the store, I'm going to still wear a t-shirt, sweatpants, but it's not like going to have holes in it. It's not going to be a bleach stained t-shirt. I'm going to still look in the mirror, like glance at myself and, you know, like have that attraction to myself, or just still like feel presentable. So I always tell people, you want to make sure you're comfortable with yourself. Like when no one is watching. when no
Yeah,
one's around.
exactly.
So
It's so funny though, because like, mine was always the opposite. Like whenever I would get into relationships, or even when I was younger, because like I said, I was like always the weird one. That I need to stop saying that. I need to. But,
you were unique.
I was always the extra one, but that's just honestly like my personality. It's so funny because that's really like a personality trait of mine. I always say like I was like some other person in a past life because I feel like I dragged over because it's so intense. But always like in relationships, they always wanted me to tone it down, and it was so weird to me because I'm like, you met me like this. Why would you want me to tone it down? So it's the
Right.
opposite, and it's almost like
Right.
I'm not, obviously I wasn't doing it for them, but then I would try to change myself. And then, so it's the opposite. I would try to change myself and get rid of all of what was me, you know, the essence of me, which is like this glam, whatever. But whenever I would get out of these relationships and move on, this is like the younger me. I would feel so lost because I'm like, I don't even look like myself in the mirror anymore because I changed my whole self for this.
Right.
You know, and this was like earlier 20s and stuff like that. I've evolved a lot then, you know, since, but yeah, so it can go either way too with that.
That is so
But just own
common.
who you are, whatever it is that you are, what you like. Well, yeah, own that.
I love that, Julie. That is so, and that is such a common thing to get into a relationship, and when it's over, you're like, who
Who
am
am I?
I? Unrecognizable. Unrecognizable. We've all been there. We've all been there. So Julie, tell them where they can find you and support you, and if you have anything coming up.
I have a lot coming up on my YouTube, but I do a podcast every Monday. It's Monday Night Meetups on Life of an Everyday Podcast. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other platforms. I just don't really, I hear like it's like Overcast and other platforms. I don't really know how to access those. I know those other two platforms are like the bigger ones. You can follow me on Instagram, Life of an Everyday Goddess, and then it's Everyday Goddess on YouTube.
Awesome. I'm so happy we did this
This
call.
was so much fun. I love it.
I am so happy you agreed. You are so knowledgeable on this topic, so don't be surprised if I invite you here again. I am Tiffany, yourself, the image coach. I'm currently, so I had a program, Design Yourself, the image, but enrollment's currently is currently closed, and I'm going to reopen mid-January, late January. So definitely stay tuned. If you haven't already, subscribe to my email list. The link is in the bio. And you guys have a good night. Thank you so much.
TikTok is so good. Honestly. Like, I saw one of your. I saw the video where building trust with yourself. How to build trust with your. I love that video.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. You know,
that was so good.
People don't know how to really do that. So I always say, honor your commitments.
Yes.
Honor your commitments. I learned that. Like,
I love it.
When I started to like do that, I'm like, oh, I trust me more and more every day. Like, oh, I won't like, so it like shifted so much for me. So that did a lot for me. So
yay. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you, Julie. Have a beautiful night.
Bye.
Bye.